Today, we're really taking a close look at the 12 Steps of Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah, a comprehensive guide, you could say.
Exactly. Our goal is to give you something clear, insightful, and importantly, practical for your own recovery journey or, just for understanding it better.
Right. Whether you're deep into working the program or maybe just exploring what it's all about.
We want to delve into the core principles, offer some solid, actionable insights.
And for this in-depth look, we're drawing on the main NA texts.
The basic text.
The basic text, absolutely. Plus, it works how and why, and the step working guide. We're aiming to kind of weave these together.
Synthesize them, yeah.
Yeah, bring out the core wisdom, maybe spark some of those aha moments for you, help you see how these steps really apply in life.
And hopefully do it in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. More engaging, really.
That's the plan. Focused insights.
Okay, so let's dive in. The 12 steps, they're built on these foundational spiritual principles. If we look at the basic text and it works how and why, what are those core concepts that can coming up?
Well, what's really striking is how central a few key principles are. Honesty is probably number one.
Right.
The basic text even calls it the antidote to our diseased thinking. And it's not just about, telling the truth to others.
That's that honesty with ourselves first, isn't it?
Exactly. That radical self-honesty that starts breaking down denial.
Yeah, because if you can't be honest about where you are,
Yeah,
well, how do you move forward?
you can't really. And right alongside honesty comes hope. It works. How and why talks about it being that first little start.
That feeling that maybe, just maybe, things could be different.
Precisely. Even when everything feels hopeless. That initial glimmer is so important.
Because that hope can grow into faith.
Yes, exactly. And faith here isn't necessarily religious in a traditional sense. It's more about believing in something, some power greater than our own willpower.
Like finding something that can help.
Right. It works how and why mentions those moments where the obsession lifts unexpectedly that can be a powerful seed for faith.
Okay. Then we get to surrender. That's a big one. Sometimes it sounds like just giving up.
It does, but the texts frame it very differently. It's more about letting go of the illusion that we were ever in control of our addiction.
Ah, the illusion of control. I like that.
It's accepting that our way just wasn't working. It's not weak. It's actually a courageous step towards trying a new way.
Which requires willingness, right?
Absolutely. Willingness is huge. That decision to be open, to try this new path, even when it feels uncomfortable or scary.
That seems like a real turning point for a lot of people.
It is. Willingness fuels the change. And building on that, there's humility. We see it especially around steps 7 and 8.
What does humility look like in this context?
It's about recognizing our own fallibility, our shared humanity, understanding we're not the center of the universe, we're all imperfect and interconnected.
And it takes courage to get there, especially for steps 4 and 5, the inventory steps.
Oh, definitely. Courage to face ourselves honestly, to look at things we'd rather avoid and still take action.
That self-examination.
Courage drives it. And it's tied closely to integrity, having that internal compass, knowing which principles to practice and trying to live by them consistently. Integrity really supports that ongoing honesty.
We also see selflessness mentioned, particularly with service work.
Right. Helping others, carrying the message, it's not just altruistic. It's crucial for our own recovery and growth.
Interesting. So service helps the person serving too.
Immensely. Then there's acceptance. Accepting powerlessness, accepting our flaws, accepting others, accepting life on life's terms.
Which ties back to surrender, in a way.
It does. And you really need open-mindedness for all of this to work. Being willing to hear new ideas, consider that maybe you don't have all the answers.
Allows you to actually take in the program.
Exactly. And closely linked is awareness that continuous self-checking, like in step 10 and 11, staying conscious of our thoughts and actions.
And kind of at the core, it feels like love and compassion are woven through everything.
Yes. Love and compassion for ourselves, which many of us struggle with, and for others, that fosters connection, which is vital.
And finally, service again, carrying the message. It seems to come full circle.
It really does. It's about sharing the hope that was given to you.
It's quite a tapestry of principles. Okay, let's shift to how these play out practically. Let's dig into some workbook questions, maybe starting with step 1. Using the step working guide, the reflection guide.
Sounds good. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. It's a two-parter.
Powerlessness and unmanageability. What's the core understanding here?
Powerlessness, as the reflection guide points out, isn't just that we couldn't stop using entirely. It's also about losing control once we started, doing things we never intended.
Right, the first one leads to chaos.
Exactly. And unmanageability covers that chaos. Both the external stuff, jobs, relationships, legal troubles, and the internal stuff.
The emotional turmoil, the obsessive thinking.
Precisely. The internal state of being governed by the addiction.
So the workbooks guide you to personalize this.
Yeah.
Like the question, what does powerless mean to me?
Yeah, the reflection guide really pushes you to find your specific examples. When did you intend to do one thing, but your addiction led you somewhere else entirely? It's about making it real, not just abstract.
Moving beyond just saying the words.
Right. And then, what is the evidence of unmanageability?
How do you answer that?
Again, the reflection guide suggests connecting it to concrete life events. Lost jobs, damaged relationships, financial mess, constant anxiety. That's the evidence.
Okay. Then there are questions about denial, like, have I given plausible but untrue reasons for my behavior?
Ah, yes, from the step work guidance framework. That hits denial right where it lives. It works how and why talks about denial shielding us.
So like saying, I was just tired, when really you were high or drunk.
Exactly. Plausible excuse, but not the truth. Uncovering those self-deceptions is key.
And another straightforward one. What does unmanageability mean to me?
Here, the focus is often on both that external fallout and the internal feeling. That sense of being driven by something, that obsessive, compulsive, self-seeking behavior mentioned in It Works How and Why.
Feeling out of control inside.
Yeah. And then reservations. What reservations am I still holding on to?
What are reservations exactly?
The yeah buts. The little loopholes we leave for ourselves that undermine full surrender.
Like thinking, okay, I won't use that, but maybe I can still do this. Or hang out with the same people.
Precisely. The reflection guide also stresses how dangerous these are. They show where we haven't fully accepted step one yet.
Got it. Okay, moving to step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. What's this shift about?
Well, step one leaves a void, right? Powerlessness. Step two offers the solution, as the basic text says. And it works. How and Why explains that belief often starts small, just with hope.
Just the possibility of getting better.
Exactly, that tiny seed.
The step writing guide asks, what action can I take that will help me along in the process of coming to believe?
Good question. Practical actions are key here. Things like trying to be open-minded, even if you're skeptical.
Like just being willing to consider it.
Yeah. Talking honestly with the sponsor about doubts, going to meetings consistently, and really listening to how others found their higher power.
That makes sense. Another question from that guide. What areas of my life do I need sanity now?
This gets you to pinpoint where things still feel crazy or out of balance. Obsessive thoughts, emotional chaos, maybe specific behaviors or relationships. Where does that lack of sanity still show up?
Okay. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. This sounds like a big decision.
It is. It's consciously choosing to move away from relying only on self-will. It works. How and Why links self-will to self-centeredness, stubbornness, basically the stuff that wasn't working.
And the basic text says it gets easier with practice.
It does. It's not usually a one-time lightning bolt. It's a decision you often reaffirm daily.
The step writing guide asks, what is the difference between my will and God's will? How do people approach that early on?
Often, God's will, or your higher power's will, is initially understood simply as what keeps you clean and helps you recover.
Like doing the next right thing, going to a meeting, calling your sponsor.
Exactly. Staying clean, working the program, that's a solid starting point for understanding God's will for you.
And the complete NA 12-step working guide asks, in what areas of life are you most reluctant to surrender control?
That's a deep one. It asks for real honesty about where you're still trying to run the show, even if it's causing problems. Relationships, money, career.
Where you're still white-knuckling it.
Yeah. Where is letting go the hardest?
Okay, step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. This sounds daunting.
It can feel that way. But it works. How and Why explains its purpose. Sorting through the past, understanding who we really are, good and bad, and letting go of old baggage.
The basic text even calls it a loving process.
It does. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about seeing clearly so you can heal and change. Looking at assets as well as defects.
And the focus is firmly on our part, right? Not blaming others.
Absolutely. The basic text is clear. Inventory of ourselves, our actions, reactions, resentments, fears. How did we contribute?
What about the word moral? It works. How and why mentioned, some people stumble over that.
Yeah, and it suggests talking that through with a sponsor. It's not about imposing someone else's morality. It's about understanding our own values and where our behavior maybe didn't align with them, getting honest about our patterns.
Got it. Then step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Why share it?
Huge step. The reflection guide talks about the freedom from secrets and shame. Sharing builds trust, deepens connection with your higher power, with yourself, and with another person.
The basic text calls it a deeper honesty.
Exactly. Putting it all out there.
And actually saying it out loud seems critical.
It is. The basic text stresses that. Verbalizing breaks the power of denial and isolation. We even heard it described in one source as surgery of the spirit.
Wow. Surgery of the spirit.
Yeah, often leading to this feeling of lightness, of relief, getting it out.
We're covering a lot. Could you maybe just briefly touch on the core idea of the latest steps, 6 through 12?
Sure. Step 6 is about becoming entirely willing for your higher power to remove those character defects you identified in step 4.
So willingness again.
Big time. Step 7 is humbly asking for that removal. Step 8 involves making a list of people we've harmed and becoming willing to make amends.
Willingness seems to be a theme.
It runs through so many steps. Step 9 is actually making those amends where possible, unless doing so would cause more harm.
The action step.
Right. Step 10 is about keeping it going, continuous inventory, and admitting wrongs promptly. Maintenance.
Staying current.
Exactly. Step 11 is deepening that connection with a higher power through prayer and meditation, improving conscious contact.
And 12.
Step 12 is the result. Having had a spiritual awakening because of these steps, and then carrying the message to others and practicing these principles in all parts of your life.
That's a fantastic overview. Okay, now for you, the listener, let's shift to some personal reflection. Based on what we've discussed, these principles, the early steps, did any aha moments jump out at you?
Yeah, what really resonated. And thinking about unmanageability beyond just drug use, how else has it shown up in your life? Remember, it works. How and why notes, it can be other obsessions, compulsions.
Interesting. Where might you feel resistance to surrender right now? And what fears might be underneath that?
And what comes up for you honestly when you think about a power greater than yourself? Remember, the basic text emphasizes God as we understood him. It's personal.
What might turning your will over look like in just one specific part of your life today? Just one small action.
And thinking back to those reservations we talked about in step 1, do any of those feel familiar? Why might that be?
Good questions to sit with. Now let's make this even more concrete. Here's some actionable things you could try this week.
Okay, practical stuff. How about this? Each morning, just take a moment. Think about where you could practice a little surrender today.
Nice. And maybe at the end of the day, spend a few minutes reflecting. Where did self-will maybe pop up? Where could you have practiced more acceptance?
If you have a sponsor, maybe pick one workbook question from the steps we discussed and talk it through this week. Go a bit deeper.
Good idea. Or at your next meeting, consciously listen for how people share about honesty, hope, surrender in their own lives.
And practice gratitude. Notice any small moments of hope anytime you felt less powerless. See that as step 2 happening.
What about humility?
Try finding one small opportunity each day to put someone else's needs or preferences before your own. Just a small act.
These are great manageable practices. As we start to wrap up, maybe we can tackle a few clarifying questions people might have.
Sure. Like, how do you tell the difference between healthy self-care and that negative self-will we talked about?
That's a common one.
Definitely. Or, if everyone's higher power is personal, how does NA stay unified? Which really goes back to tradition 3. The only requirement is a desire to stop using.
Right. The unity isn't based on identical beliefs.
Exactly. What about practical ways to build a relationship with a higher power if it feels really abstract or weird at first?
Good one. The text suggests prayer, meditation, working the steps, talking to others about it.
Yeah. And how does working these early steps actually lead to that spiritual awakening mentioned in step 12? What does that even mean?
It's about the changes in perspective and behavior that come from consistently applying these principles, right?
That's how the basic text frames it, a change in us and how we live.
Mhm.
And finally, where can you go for more?
Well, obviously the basic text, it works how and why. The guides we mentioned, they're ongoing resources. Plus meetings, sponsors.
Absolutely. The literature and the fellowship are key for deeper exploration.
So we really hope this deep dive into the principles and early steps of NA has been helpful, giving you a practical and hopefully insightful guide.
Yeah, food for thought for your recovery journey.
You definitely encourage you to keep exploring the NA literature and, crucially, connect with the fellowship. That shared experience is so powerful.
It really is. There's so much support and wisdom there.
And maybe we can leave you with one final thought to ponder. Considering step one isn't just something you do once.
Right, it's ongoing.
In what new areas of your life today might you need to take another look at powerlessness and unmanageability? Where might it be showing up now?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.